Hello again and welcome to Chess Base Workshop. I'm Steve Lopez. Thank you for clicking the link and coming along for the ride today. We've been talking about beginner functions in Fritz. I've been asked to do this. This is something that has been requested time and again. As I explained last week, these videos tend to be geared to something in the middle ground. I tend to go for the average club player. But I've had a lot of contact with beginners lately, telephone, email, that want to know how to use Fritz to improve their game without getting killed game after game after game by the software. So last week we looked at a couple different things you can do. One of them is to download and install a weaker chess engine than what comes with the software. There's a great program at chessbase.com. It's called Turing, named after computer scientist, theoretician Alan Turing, who was a big name back in the 1940s and 50s. Worth a read, by the way. There's some books about him. He's a very interesting guy. You should read about him. He created a chess program in the early 1950s that played some really bad chess, but it was the first actual chess program that anybody ever wrote. And our programmers took Turing's formula, his algorithm, his computer formula for playing chess, and made a chess engine out of it that can be used in the Fritz and chess-based interfaces. You can find it at chessbase.com under Service and Download. Once you get there, click on the little pull down for the different things you can find downloads for. One of them just says engines, and if you click on it, there'll be a whole list of engines you can download and install. The one you scroll the whole way to the bottom of the page, there's one called Turing, T-U-R-I-N-G. Install it, please. If you're a beginner, it's a great sparring partner for people that are new to chess. Much better than Fritz is. Fritz is a great sparring partner for stronger players. It's a great analysis engine for anybody to use, to get really good analysis as to why your games went wrong. But for playing casual games against, unless you're a really strong player, Fritz is going to kill you. I mean, Fritz is that dang strong. So you want something maybe a little bit easier when you're starting out, which is why I recommended Turing. We looked at playing odds games against Fritz in the last video, where Fritz will remove some material from the board, and then you play your game. There's another thing you can do, which I'm actually very fond of, even as a regular club level player. This is a cool way to play against Fritz. If you go to training, we looked at handicap position last week. Go to the next command above. It says handicap and fun, and click on it. Do not be dissuaded by Bobo the clown there. It's not saying that you're a clown. It's saying that the program will play like a clown more weakly. And by the way, I am not downing anybody. I'm not insulting anybody who is a clown by profession. You'll laugh, but I actually have 3 friends who clown professionally. So it gives you an idea of the company I keep. Anyway, you load an engine. You come here and you can do all kinds of things in this dialog. First of all, you can click on a preset character, Potzer, Moron, Reckless, and you'll see that all these different parameters will change. They're all sliders. You can reset them, by the way, but they all change depending on what you click on. By the way, assassin is misspelled, but you didn't hear that from me. Anyway, you've got different strength and other parameters that you can set here. Just click on Steamroller or Frady Cat, play a game. However, what's more fun is being able to set all these things yourself. One thing you can do is playing strength slider. This is the main thing that I want to call your attention to, is the playing strength slider. I have the Fritz engine loaded. I'll show you here. I'll slide this over. You'll notice that the Fritz engine is currently loaded, Fritz12, and it will play using the slider at a strength, and these are FIDE ELO ratings, not USCF. USCF tends to be somewhat overinflated. So, for example, a 1400 USCF player actually plays at about a 1300 FIDE rating. And I'm not knocking the USCF, it's just a different pool of players. But because this is programmed in Germany, where they're talking about players worldwide, they tend to use FIDE ratings instead of USCF ELO ratings. So the USCF, because you're playing in a closed pool of players just in the United States, maybe the occasional Canadian, the ratings skew a little bit differently. But anyway, the point is you can take this slider, and if you move it the whole way to the right, you'll see the center number changes. Center number is the current setting of the program. So, for example, it's currently set at 1800. If you scroll it the whole way to the right, the program will play at approximately, not dead on the money, but approximately 2337 rating, which is, well into master range. So if you come the whole way to the other side, which is what I'm looking at doing here, if you're a beginner, this is what you want. You try to get the program to play as weakly as you can. Stronger than you, hopefully, because you only get better by playing stronger players. Stronger than you, but not so much so that you're not getting a competitive game. You want to play a game. You don't want to get slaughtered after 15 moves. So you want to get a little bit of playing time in. This is one way to do it. You can set the playing strength lower. You will notice that if you load different engines, you get different playing strengths on this slider. Please allow me to demonstrate. Some of them will be slightly lower. We're not talking, tremendously. But let me give you an example. Remember, 1375 is as weak as you can get Fritz to play. So I hit F3 to bring up the engine dialog. We'll scroll down. We'll pull up our old friend Touring. Click OK. Touring loads. Now we go to Handicap and Fun. And notice that the playing strength now can be set the whole way down to 900 instead of 1375. This is on this particular computer, by the way. I do own more than one computer, and when I load Fritz12 and a particular engine on different computers, I get different spans of ratings. Okay? So we scroll down here and we get 900 for Touring. You have other settings that you can tweak around and play with here. I'm not going to go through all of them because they're in the help file. This is why there are help files in the software. If you click help, you'll get context-sensitive help. However, the things you can really do with this is you can really alter how the program plays, how it values different crucial concepts in the game of chess. For example, king attack. If you go the whole way to maximum with it, it's going to come hell for leather at your king. Even at the expense of playing bad moves, it's just going to try to knock you out as fast as possible. Whereas if you go to minimum, it tends to play a lot more conservatively. It doesn't really come after your king quite as hard. If you remember Fritz12 back in the day, those of you who've been with chess-based products for a long time, Fritz12's default king attack was like uber max. It would just, it was the scariest chess program I've ever played. It would just come at you and come at you and come at you hammer and tongue. Another slider you got here is King's Defense. How highly does the software value defending its own king? If you go to max, it's going to play extremely conservatively. If you even threaten to threaten its king, it's going to take measures to try to stop you. It's going to panic. Whereas if you go the whole way to minimum, it don't care. You can attack its king, and it's going to go, huh, and keep doing whatever it's doing. If you want to play a really interesting game against your chess engine, have it attack your king like mad and disregard its own king's defense, and you'll see some wild stuff, let me tell you. So those are two you can play with that are pretty cool. Pawn structure, if you've done anything with pawn structures, you know some structures are good, some structures are bad. Maximum pawn structure, the program will not double a pawn, even if it's more detrimental to not double the pawn than to double it, it ain't going to double that pawn, okay? Whereas if you go to minimum, it doesn't care. You'll find doubled pawns, you'll find backward pawns, it'll do all kinds of dumb things with its pawns. Mobility, center control, it's all pretty self-explanatory stuff. Piece play, certain players really love certain pieces. I played against a guy way back in the day, probably about 20 years ago, that used to push pawns like crazy. Even if he had a great move with a bishop, he'd find a way to push a pawn instead. So if you were to check pawn and maximum, it's going to move its pawns an awful lot, even at the expense of doing something useful with other pieces. You can set any of the pieces for that. If you select king, it's going to move its king around a lot, whereas if you go to minimum, it won't move its king around at all, even maybe possibly to the point where it won't castle. Okay? So that's what you do. How much does it favor playing particular pieces? Unfortunately, you can only pick one piece. You can't pick more than one. Well, you could. I mean, you could say it can move, very seldom move its queens and knights, or really move its queens and knights. But you don't get the level of fine-tuning where you can have it make a lot of knight moves and very few queen moves. Basically, you just pick something and move the slider to minimum or maximum. So this is a way to get some interesting play out of your software. Again, go into the help file. It explains these a little bit more. And I've had a great time with this, a lot of fun with this over the years. I had settings set up way back in the time of about Fritz12 or so, as I recall. Way back in the day, I had Fritz playing exactly like a guy that I played at chess club who had very interesting, usually bad habits in his play. I could make it play just like him. And it was great fun to play against it because it was great sparring. He was one of those guys that played such unusual play that he would do stuff that you never saw coming, that you would never consider. And consequently, you could beat him, but it took a fair bit of thought to do it. Because his play was unorthodox, to say the least, yet oddly predictable. So what I want to do is practice against the software. So I set all of these sliders and settings up where I got it to play just like this guy, and I practiced at home against this particular kind of a character that I made in Fritz, and got to where I wasn't thinking so hard to beat him down at chess club. So that's another way that a beginner can play against Fritz and do so without getting shelled by the software playing at full strength time and time and time again. So try this out. It's fun, even for experienced players. As I've said, like myself, I like this a lot. I really like to play it in handicap mode. I'll load a particular engine, and I'll try to set the slider. You know, I'll load a little bit stronger engine. Like I said, we'll go back to Fritz. And I'll try to find a spot here. I'll move the slider approximately my USCF rating. Even though I haven't played a rated game in close to 20 years, I'll set it to my approximate playing strength, which means it's going to play about 100 ELO points stronger than me. Okay? And then I'll just play little matches against the software, and it's great fun to do. And I've been recommending that technique for a long time. I've been doing it myself for a very long time. So give it a shot. Have fun with this. That's what it's there for. That's why there's Happy Bobo the Clown there smiling at you, because this is a real fun way to play against Fritz, regardless of your playing strength. Unless you're a super grandmaster, you know, one of these uber players that we all read about, you can have a great time with this. And not only have fun with it, but also improve your chess by using these settings, by playing against weird playing styles. Somebody who is a crazed attacker and doesn't care about his own king's defense. Set it up. Try it. You get different play out of the software, just like you play against different people at the chess club. There may be 2 or 3 guys clustered together in the 1500 to 1550 rating range, but no 2 of them play exactly the same way. So you get different styles of play by using handicap mode in Fritz. Give it a try. It's a good time. Well, that's it for Chess Base Workshop. I'm Steve Lopez. Until next time, please do have fun.